The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
You'll say we've got nothing in common, no common ground to start from, and we're falling apart. You'll say the world has come between us, our lives have come between us. Still I know you just don't care. And I said, what about breakfast at Tiffany's? She said, I think I remember the film, and as I recall, I think we both kinda liked it. And I said, well, that's the one thing we got.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035 is worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com, and our archives are available free 24/7, 365 at xzonepodcast.com. This hour, X-Zone Nation, we're going to be talking about religion versus science. This is the book that is written by our guest this hour, Ron Frost. It's entitled Religion versus Science, where both sides go wrong in the great evolution debate. As commonly presented, the great battle between science and religion over evolution is intractable. Now, although the facts of evolution are beyond doubt, the big mistake that many scientists make is to present these facts using a materialistic premise that is not scientifically defendable, I should say. The resulting model for evolution implies that humans arose on the planet merely by chance, and that our lives are essentially meaningless. In Religion versus Science, our guest this hour, Ron Frost, argues that the world's religions advocate for the existence of a transcendent, it's one of those days, consciousness. If you accept this premise, the book notes that it leads to a theory of evolution that is consistent with the scientific fact and mystical teaching. Joining me now is Ron Frost. And Ron, welcome to the X-Zone.
Thank you for having me.
Ron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a great guy.
You know what? That's what everybody was saying earlier today, that Ron Frost is a great guy.
No, I'm a professor of geology. I've been a geologist for more than 30 years, and I've studied rocks that, well, some of the oldest rocks in the world we've been working on. And I have done geology all over spent a lot of time in Wyoming and a lot of time in Canada, and I've done field work in Siberia and Australia, and I'm, in addition to that, I'm a Buddhist.
Wow.
So I've had 25 years of Buddhist practice, and as I began to recognize what was going on in Buddhism, what was going on in my mind, I realized that part of the evolution debate is being fed by the fact that we have, materialistic scientists who are using evolution as a way to say that there is no spiritual dimension to life. Foremost among that is the famous biologist, I think is from Cambridge, by the name of Richard Dawkins, who wrote The Selfish Gene about 1975, and he's sort of gotten more and more atheistic until his most recent book was called The God Delusion. I did what most people consider an absolutely foolish thing, but by jumping into the debate by writing a book myself.
I don't think it was a foolish thing after going through it earlier today. I think that this is going to be a great hour. And to quote Carl Gibson, offers a fresh perspective on one of the deepest questions of our time. Ron, please stand by. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. Exonation, Ron Frost is my special guest. We're talking about Ron's new book, Religion versus Science, where both sides go wrong in the greatest evolution debate. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Ron Frost and I return in 2 minutes flat here in the X Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Exonation, our guest this hour, is the author of Religion versus Science, where both sides go wrong in the great evolution debate. Professor Ronald Frost is our guest. He's with the Department of Geology and Geophysics at the University of Wyoming. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. All right, now when did you decide, or what was the catalyst that inspired you as a geologist to take a good hard look into the great evolution debate?
Well, I think one thing is that it came clear to me that there are certain things. I mean, it's creationists are starting off, let's say, by saying it's a young Earth and the dinosaurs were around when human beings were around and all that stuff, which makes no geologic sense. But what they're saying is that there's something more to life than the simple mechanistic processes that most biologists apply to the existence of human beings. So in other words, deep underneath all this stuff which is patently wrong in creationism, there's an underlying theme, an underlying drive which is causing them to do it. And the fact that if you accept the way Dawkins views evolution, that essentially all you are is a bucket of chemicals meant to carry your genes around, it makes a very bleak view of what humans are meant to be.
Well, I've been called worse than a bucket to carry genes around in my life, but if this is the case, then why are students who are in high school, university, still getting the same old story about the way that it all happened? Why doesn't somebody say, hey, wait a minute, before we continue teaching, we have to come up with a definitive answer, bring everybody to the table and hash it out for once and for all?
Well, I think the problem is you know, we shouldn't be teaching philosophy in college, but in high school even. But, you know, philosophy is a basic thing that we're looking at here, is how do we understand the world around us?
Wouldn't it be a better way to ask that question is how did the people who wrote the books and came up with these ideas so many years ago, where did they get that information from?
Well, that's true. I mean, there are facts for evolution. You know, the Earth, the universe is 13.7 billion years old. That's pretty incontrovertible.
Right.
The Earth is 4.56 billion years ago old. That's also very, very solid. So you can look at the fossil record. You could put together the times that animals evolved and appeared and stuff like that. All that is very solid. And the more science we get, or the more evidence we get in science, the stronger the story of evolution becomes. The problem is how we interpret those facts. And as I said, people like Richard Dawkins start out with the assumption that everything is material. What you see is what you get. There's nothing else there besides the physical world, and they develop a view of evolution that's based entirely upon that assumption. And if you start out with that assumption, the necessary conclusion is that humans are pretty much nothing. You know, they appeared by luck or chance, and an individual human life is really not that important.
How much of a I've got to word this very carefully here. How much of a misnomer, then, in your opinion, is the biblical account of Genesis?
This is very interesting. Do you realize that back, I think it's in the 5th century, or maybe it's the 4th century, St. Augustine decried the teaching of the Bible as literary fact.
Wow.
And then he said that you know, he was around the time when they were trying to convert pagans in Rome, and they were pretty educated folks. And he made the point that if you teach the Bible as literal fact, you're going to look stupid. And what's worse about that, it's going to make the whole church look ignorant. And the interesting thing is that 15 centuries later, he's completely correct. That basically the attempt to read the Bible as literal truth, as opposed to allegory, which has been read as for the longest time in Christian theology, is it essentially makes the people who are arguing against the materialistic view of evolution look quite uneducated.
So tell me, in your expert opinion, being a professor in the Department of Geology and Geophysics at the University of Wyoming, how do you, sir, believe or hypothesize that we evolved on this planet? Where did we come from?
Well, I think the evidence is, as I said, is very strong that natural selection and evolution has taken place as the fossil record shows. The question is, how did this take place? The view of typical materialist evolutionary people is that it took place totally by chance. There's random changes of the gene code here and a random change there, and animals eventually evolved. And that's it. We just arose by chance.
Okay.
Now, if you take the premise that not only did evolution occur, but evolution occurred within the domain of a spiritual dimension, then there's a completely different view of how things could have evolved. I mean, evolution is incredibly successful at exploiting all the niches that life could find. animals learned to fly 4 different times. You have insects and pterosaurs, which were flying dinosaurs, and birds and bats. Mm-hmm. And the insects didn't evolve into pterosaurs or bats. The birds didn't evolve into bats. Essentially, each of those different groups evolved out of some sort of land-based creature to take advantage of gravity. And I said, okay, if there's a spiritual dimension out there, then even if there is no direct creator involved, evolution would have found a way to exploit it to make a creature that is self-conscious.
How would you define a spiritual evolution?
Well, that's really good, and this is where we get into real tricky situations. This is where the scientists would gag.
Okay.
At Teilhardism. I mean, the theory I'm putting forth was put forth previously by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
But you and I are two great, very great, brave guys. So let's take this bull by the horns.
Okay. Well, I think the problem is that the term I like to use is epistemological uncertainty.
Okay.
Okay, epistemology is a study of how we know what we know. Mm-hmm. And science has a very simple epistemology. It says there's some questions out there. We'll do the scientific method. We'll establish a series of experiments to test our theories, and we'll develop a way to explain this that fits our theories the best. And that works just fine as long as you're dealing with something you can measure.
Exactly.
But you can't measure consciousness. You can't measure love. I like to make this example that you can't take your partner and plug her into some sort of machine to find out how much she loves you.
Oh yes, I've got a real good way of that. It's how much money I've got left from my paycheck after I give it to her. That shows me how much she loves me.
Right. But anyhow,
yeah.
The problem is that once we start talking about things that cannot be measured by science, the epistemology of science falls apart. And therefore scientists, they don't want to have anything to do with that. Because it doesn't fit their way of studying the phenomenal world. So Teilhard put forth these ideas that evolution has a spiritual dimension 50 years ago, and they're the subset of people in philosophy and the humanities who really like what he said, but it doesn't have much purchase in science for a very good reason, because you can't do scientific tests on it.
So science is saying if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, if I can't hear it, it doesn't exist.
Exactly. And what I'm saying is, or what religions say, is that if you study the world closely enough, mostly by contemplative practice and prayer or meditation, however you want to do it, you will find that there's aspects of your consciousness that come from outside your head.
All right,
your body.
Stand by, Ron. It's great talking to you. I love this discussion. Ron Frost is our special guest, Professor Ronald Frost. He's with the Department of Geology and Geophysics at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, Wyoming. He's the author of Religion versus Science. His website is www.ronfrost.com, and his book, Religion versus Science, Where Both Sides Go Wrong in the Great Evolution Debate, is available at Amazon.com. We'll be back on the other side of the news. Don't go away. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035. Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Cheer up, sleepy Jean. Oh, what can it mean? Every time I think of you, I always catch my breath, and I'm still standing here, and you're miles away, and I'm wondering why you left. And there's a storm that's raging through my frozen heart tonight. I hear your name in certain circles, and it always makes me smile. I spend my time
Exo Nation,
thinking about you.
Ron Frost is my special guest this hour. We're talking about Ron's new book. It's entitled Religion versus Science, Where Both Sides Go Wrong in the Great Evolution Debate. His website is ronfrost.com. And his book, Religion versus Science, is available on Amazon.com. All right, so we've got the scientists who are saying, look, if you can't touch it, if you can't feel it, if you can't hear it, if you can't see it, it just doesn't exist. Poof. So I would imagine that there are certain religious factions that really irritate the scientific community.
Well, yeah. I mean, the young Earth creationists, for example, we just sort of ignore because, well, their attitude is, God said it, I believe it, that settles it. Which means you should not even bother discussing the matter with them. But, as I try to point out in the book, and I've tried to point it out earlier, a literal interpretation of the Bible is historically not the way the Christians interpreted the Bible, and it is a view of religion that's occupies only a very small fraction of the big spectrum of Christianity.
You know, I've offered this to many guests on the show, and I'd like to get your feedback on it. How would the Bible have been written if the same events that happened in biblical times that were recorded in the Bible happened today with our knowledge of science, physics, astronomy, and all the other disciplines that we have learned since the time of the writing of the Bible? My question is, would the Bible even exist?
Well, that's a good question, because the Bible essentially is a history of a series of tribes in Arabia, and superimposed upon it are all these other little legends and myths and everything. But the Bible also is trying to illuminate some spiritual depth, spiritual reality. So I suspect that they would rely less upon, let's say, the fact that the earth was formed in 7 days,
right?
Because that's all the information they had at the time, and they would incorporate scientific aspects to it, but they would also say there's a spiritual aspect that we have to understand as well. So, yeah, it'd be very different. What we're doing is we're interpreting, or what a lot of young Earth creationists are doing, is interpreting the Bible as solid fact, whereas throughout history of early Christian theology, it was allegory. This is exactly what St. Augustine was saying when he said it's embarrassing when people teach it as science, as solid fact.
It would almost seem that religion is one way to go about buying into immortality.
That could be. We have this very interesting problem with religion in the fact that all religions have started from people who've had mystical insights.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they're trying to impart those insights into their disciples.
Right.
And if you don't have the insight but you follow the ritual, then is the ritual going to make you any holier than if you didn't participate in the religion at all? I mean, this is sort of the view I have from Buddhism, where they say, just sit and experience it. Don't interpret it, just have the experience. And there's no dogma to explain the experience.
What are your thoughts on dreams then, and simple day-to-day spiritual experiences that people may feel? If it's not real according to the scientific community, how do we rationalize its reality to those who would rather live in a world of spirituality than scientific logic?
That's a good question. One of the interesting things about science is that scientific insight involves creativity. Mm-hmm. And creativity involves something I would say is spiritual. Something goes on in your consciousness. You can't measure creativity.
No.
You can't. And so at the same time, we have people saying science is a study of the phenomenal world. If we can't measure it, can't see it, it doesn't exist. But at the same time, they rely upon creativity to understand or to take their data and turn it into theories.
So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Well, what they're doing is they're belying their own statements.
Right. Do you see society as it stands now with an open requirement for philosophies that could be classified as theological philosophies? Do we need theology in today's society?
Oh, I think we definitely do. I think that when you look at the cold and, I won't say quite inhuman, but automatons that is visualized from a lot of the scientific writing,
right,
that we need to soften that. I mean, one of the reasons I can see that this book came up to me, one of the reasons why I wrote this book is to make the argument that these fellows who are saying that science proves atheism are just completely wrong. That science can be totally compatible with religion as long as religion is based upon, shall we say, empirical experiences rather than some old dogma. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'll have huge debates between Jews and Muslims and Christians, but if you look at the mystical writings in each of those religions, they're almost exactly the same.
That's right. That's right. And even when you look at Greek mythology and put it side by side with Christianity, there are so many similarities. For example, in Greek mythology, the gods lived atop Mount Olympus. In Christianity, God lives in heaven. In Greek mythology, Hercules, the son of a god and the son of a mortal, he had superhuman strength and was able to do unbelievable things, just like Jesus Christ could walk on water, cure the ill, raise the dead. And you look at all these different philosophies as well as mythologies, and you know what? It's amazing we've come this far without going crazy.
Yeah, because someone happens to accept one mythology and then considers everything else as myth.
Yeah.
I mean, I think myth is actually a really important part of life because it's a way to try to express to people realities that cannot be described directly, but have to be symbolized. And so the fact that all religions seem to come from the same experience, but they develop a whole bunch of different ideologies, is sort of telling us a lot about how human minds work. Certain cultures will emphasize one aspect of the experience, and other cultures will emphasize another aspect.
As in any topic or anything on this planet that we know so far, there's always a beginning as well as always an ending. Those who are very interested and are hard believers in theology, the evolution, the beginning, the Big Bang Theory, the controversies that have been going on for decades, there's also those same people who believe that the end is imminent and that, the world is going to come to an end. You've got the age of apocalypse and, the end of the world, procrastinators. If they're so diehard in the creation, why are they also so diehard in the destruction, the end?
Well, again, it's the adherence to the myth that at some time in the future, Jesus will be back. There'll be the final judgment. The holy people will rise to heaven, and the rest of the people will suffer on earth or go to hell.
Right.
But, they've been predicting this since the year 1000.
Yeah.
And it hasn't happened yet. I certainly don't know an answer to that, and fortunately I didn't work on that aspect in the book. But, yes, there's a whole bunch of millennia people there who sort of think that the end of the day, or the final days are coming.
That's right. In fact, there are more and more people jumping on the bandwagon that the world is going to come to an end on December the 21st, 2012, at the end of the Mayan calendar. And the funny part is that the Mayans say, we never said that.
Yeah, they said, well, I don't think we have to go any further, so we'll just stop there.
Yeah, or as one Mayan elder told me, he said, Rob, it's just like the New Year's Eve in your household, or New Year's Day. You take the old calendar down, you put the new one up. But nobody talks about the positive aspect of that. Everybody wants to live on the doom and gloom side, which I think is totally silly. But that's just me. What is your interpretation, then, of the Tree of Life?
Well, that's a very solid mythical image, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's both a mythical. We've got the Tree of Life in terms of biological aspects.
Yes.
In other words, we can show how there's a commonality in DNA and biological processes that go from bacteria to single cell organisms to humans eventually, and there's different sprouts that have come off of it. The Tree of Life is also a mystical thing, that the trees tend to be things that unite heaven and earth. Right. And the crucifixion of Jesus is considered an example of the Tree of Life, and the enlightenment of the Buddha took place under the Bodhi tree, which is another example of this tree that is a mystical thing that's essentially uniting the holy aspects of humans with the most animal aspects of humans. So, which Tree of Life would you like me to talk about?
Well, when we talk about the Tree of Life, most people, think about the tree in the Garden of Eden, with the serpent tempting Eve.
And that is another example of that Tree of Life, right?
Exactly.
That's essentially uniting us, or uniting the ground, which is our basal human existence, or emotions, with heaven, which is our most noble human emotions. And what should we say? A person who would read the Bible as analogy would say that when we bit into the fruit, or when Adam bit into the fruit of the Tree of Life, he recognized he essentially became self-aware. The difference between humans and almost any other animals, as far as we can tell, is that humans are self-aware of what's going on. And that's, of course, the reason why they suddenly realized they were naked. So the Adam and Eve story is often considered an analogy of humans going from essentially an animal state where they didn't recognize that they died and that they were essentially part of this existence, to becoming self-aware when they ate the apple.
So could it be that the missing link that everybody, that many members of the scientific and paleontology, those who study paleontology are looking for in our humanoid development is actually the tree of life?
Well, it's interesting because paleoanthropology has become really, really rich field.
Yeah.
And it looks like, from about 1 million years ago onward, a whole slew of different species of hominids developed, only one of which became us.
Stand by, Ron. Ron, stand by.
Be,
We've got to take our commercial break. We'll be back talking about this. So, Ron Frost, thanks very much for joining us. Very interesting hour, Ron. Ron's the author of Religion versus Science, Where Both Sides Go Wrong in the Great Evolution Debate. His website is www.ronfrost.com, and his book, Religion versus Science, is available at Amazon.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go away.
Through my frozen heart tonight, I hear your name.
100 days have made me older since the last time that I saw your pretty face. 1,000 lives have made me colder, and I don't think I can look at this the same. But all the miles that separate, they disappear now when I'm dreaming of your face. I'm here without you, baby, but you're still...
X-Zone Nation, Ron Frost is our special guest. As I've been telling you for the last hour, he's the author of Religion versus Science. His website is www.ronfrost.com. His book is available on Amazon.com. First of all, Ron, thanks very much for being with you. It's been a great hour, a very interesting hour. And what would you like to leave the members of the X-Zone Nation with tonight?
Oh, that's a deep question. Well, I think that what I'd like them to realize is that science and religion are not competitive.
Mm-hmm.
They're complementary ways of viewing the world. And if you really want to be a full human being, you have to understand both of them.
Where do you see us in the future? I was talking to somebody the other day, and it dawned on me that everybody's talking about the going into the new age, the evolution of humanity. Is it possible that we're at that point in our evolution, our development, that we are now the larvae or the caterpillar that is getting ready to come out of the cocoon to continue our quest in this dimension on this planet?
Oh, that's a deep question. One of the things that Teilhard put forth is precisely that, is that once the human beings evolved self-consciousness,
mm-hmm.
that evolution took place, or takes place, on the cultural level, not on the biological level. And so that basically what our next step in the future would be actually evolving a better way to become spiritually enlightened. You know, in other words, a society that's more enlightened to spiritual aspects of life than the material aspects.
It seems that the spiritualist has turned into the philosopher, and the scientist has turned into the realist?
Well, that could be. I think that there's a certain amount of humility that one has to have when one's working in this game. And scientists just have to have the humility to realize that what they're working on is only a certain part of the phenomenal world, and that there's other aspects that science can't deal with. They might be able to deal with it in the future, but right now they can't. And the only other way you can get access to those aspects is to have some sort of a spiritual practice.
Ron, unfortunately, we've run out of time for tonight. I do want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a very, very informative hour. I certainly have enjoyed my hour talking with you, and I look forward to the next time you join us back here in the X Zone. Congratulations with your book, a great book. I wish you much success.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Exonation Ron Frost has been my guest this hour. Religion versus Science, where both sides go wrong in the great evolution debate. It's available at Amazon.com. And for more information on Ron, visit his website, www.ronfrost.com. And Ron is a professor at the Department of Geology and Geophysics at the University of Wyoming in Laramie. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues right here from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. 6.5 minutes past. We're back. Don't go away.